Hi, folks. I'm Christine Weber, and I love to support mature yoga teachers and getting their wisdom out there into the world. So, thank you so much for joining me for my weekly live stream. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the window of tolerance and a free masterclass I have coming up tomorrow, which is called How to Leverage Yoga Sequencing for Nervous System Results, Thrilled Students, and Teaching Success. I think that's the name of it. But anyway, I've got this free class coming up tomorrow. It's at 12 noon. I'd love you to join me. Click on the link that's included in the description, and it'll take you to a sign up page for that. And I'll be repeating that workshop next Tuesday, the 26th at 7 p.m. Okay, so today, I would like to share with you a little about the window of tolerance and what that has to do with yoga sequencing. So, first of all, the window of tolerance was a model that was developed by Dan Siegel in 1999. I believe it's in his book called Mindsight, but it might be somewhere else. I'm not exactly sure. He's used it for a long time. And what does that mean? What does that window of tolerance mean? So, the window of tolerance is essentially telling us about the nervous system and where we fall in that window will determine our state of mind, our emotional health, our emotional states, and how much we can deal with what's coming at us in life. So if you think about this window, you've got this window. The upper ledge of the window is when the nervous system is revved up. So when you bump through that, when you push through that upper edge, it's called hyper arousal of the nervous system. And that's agitated and anxious and maybe angry and grumpy and you can't sleep and insomnia and all that stuff, right? So that's the upper level of the window. Hyper arousal, that would be sympathetic activation in terms of the autonomic nervous system. The lower ledge of the window is hypo arousal. And when you burst through that, that's when you go into depression and numbness and being shut down and fatigue and all that stuff. So that would be it's often the way that I see it in the research literature is that it's often because you were in too much hyperarousal for too long that you crash and burn. So it's like a burnout state. And so you don't want to say like that's too much parasympathetic. It's just not a good balance, I guess you could say, and a lack of ability for the sympathetic to fire appropriately when it needs to. Sympathetic is not bad. Parasympathetic is not good. That's a mistake that gets sort of TikTokified out there. It really is not that parasympathetic is good and sympathetic is bad. It's that the nervous system has to do this dance and there has to be a balance. And as that window widens, you can bump up into hyperarousal, no problem. You can bump down into, lots of, you've been so bumped up that you can bump down and it's no big deal. And the point of nervous system oriented yoga is that we start to bump into those ledges of the window and we bump it open further so that we can handle the ups and downs of life, so that we can handle stuff and we can tolerate it. That's why it's called the window of tolerance. We can tolerate it. So the window can be open. A lot of people, that window has shrunk, especially during COVID. People can't tolerate things, people yelling at each other in their cars, that sort of stuff going on out there, crazy making stuff that's going on out there. Yeah, because the window got smaller. So what we're doing with nervous system oriented yoga is we're plumping it up, we're bumping it up, we're opening the window, we're expanding the window. And you practice that. And through the practices, right, you practice it daily or several times a week, and you start to develop a different nervous system. Dan Goleman, Richard Davidson, in their book Altered Traits, talk about how it's a fantastic book. They talk about how the nervous system can change over time so that we alter our traits, not just our state, right? And you've probably heard me talk about this many times with TikTok and Instagram Reels and all that stuff makes us seem like there's just these simple practices you can do and you'll feel better right in the moment. And yeah, maybe if you hyperventilate for a while, you'll get a little more energy. Like that's okay. Or if you do square breath, you might feel a little calmer. But does that make changes over time? Probably not. The way we make changes over time is through repetition. We show up, we practice, we make changes. So in my workshop tomorrow, which is at 12 noon Eastern time, their replays are available till September 30th. You can watch them whenever you want. In my workshop tomorrow, which is called Leveraging Yoga Sequencing for Nervous System Results, Thrilled Students, and a more successful yoga teaching career, what I'm going to be talking about is the rationale, the reasons why we want to think about yoga in terms of balancing the nervous system and widening that window of tolerance. Yesterday, I was on a call for about 2 hours with the Integrative Health Policy Consortium. I'm the yoga therapy representative. So I'm the representative for our profession at the federal level, where we're looking to make changes in policy across the board for healthcare, for changing the system. We live in a those of you who are American, it's an incredibly unsustainable medical system, and we're trying to help make changes to that. So yesterday in this meeting, a couple of really interesting things are happening on Capitol Hill. One of them is the House Budget Committee has formed a newly formed health task force. And what they're trying to do is look at how they can reduce costs. And this is something that has been on the table. This is something that has been at the forefront of the mind of legislators since 2008, at least. Really can go back to 2001 in the Institute of Medicine's report called Crossing the Quality Chasm. But 2008, things started to change with the introduction of the Affordable Care Act. And so one of the big drivers right now is reducing costs in healthcare. How do we reduce costs in healthcare? We get people to take a little more control over their own life and their own health. About a third of the people who do yoga go for specific medical reasons. They're referred to yoga and they go for self-care. They're not going for treatment. They're going for self-care, which is a very important part of the recovery process, right? So people in Washington know this, not just about yoga. They know that complementary and integrative health is being used across the board. They know, and they know that it is one way to help reduce costs. It's a big issue right now for the House Budget Committee. It's a big issue right now in the VA, for example, the Veterans Administration. There's a lot of people looking right now for more cost-effective ways to help manage the health of our veterans. And the VA has always been on the cutting edge of healthcare. Always been on the cutting edge. They are the ones who do the most interesting things. Something really big that happened recently is that they started to allow acupuncture to be done by acupuncturists at the VA. This is big because it means it's reimbursable. We're seeing a similar move potentially towards yoga and yoga therapy. And when that happens, it's going to start it's going to start the ball rolling. And my thinking and from all this research I've done, all these people I talk to all the time, in 10 to 20 years, we're going to have an actual profession of yoga therapists who are out there, who are getting reimbursed for what they do. The whole thing is going to change. So, it's a really exciting time. What can we do right now? Right now, we can prepare for that time that's coming by offering our students something that is not exclusive, or I should say that is only including fitness. Now, there's nothing wrong with fitness, and people always say to me, like, "Why do you hate fitness?" I love it. I'm going to the gym after I finish. It's like, I love working out. I love exercise. But what I want people to understand is that there are other ways to use yoga that are not exclusively fitness oriented. And this way of using yoga, which is nervous system oriented, really appeals to the healthcare professionals, because we're telling them that we speak their language, we understand what they're trying to do, and we know how to use yoga in a way that can help people to reduce their hyperarousal, not as a side effect. This is not a side effect of what I teach. It is the primary effect of what I teach. And that's different than the way it's conceptualized in things like yin or restorative or gentle yoga. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, they're very good, but often like we're like, oh, that's relaxing, but we're not being very specific about how we're down regulating the sympathetic part of the nervous system. That's what I want to teach you. Please join my masterclass tomorrow because that's what I'll be teaching then. So let me know if you have questions or thoughts about this topic. I know I touched on a bunch of different things today, but I hope it's interesting. I hope it's helpful. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Lots of love. Take care.